Hey everyone, this is Scott from certmedia.com, and in this video I'm going to be covering the Yoast WooCommerce SEO plugin. I'm going to be covering what it does, what it gives you, and honestly whether or not you should pay for it in my opinion. Yoast WooCommerce SEO definitely seems to be one of the afterthoughts for most websites, but it does come with quite a bit of functionality. It also can address certain warnings that you get in Search Console for your product schema markup, and there are a ton of people who ask about that. I'll do a whole separate video on that, but the TLDR is if there's a warning in your Search Console related to WooCommerce markup, that's okay. You can ignore the warning. Not all warnings need to be fixed. For instance, it recommends that you have the deal markup enabled, but if the product isn't on sale, there is no deal markup to add, so you can ignore it. But Yoast SEO does allow you to add a markup that it does suggest, including some identification numbers and other stuff that you're going to need to add to clear the warnings. It also adds Pinterest rich snippets, and I'm going to address how you actually set that up because it's not documented very well anywhere, and Pinterest, honestly, I kind of just expected it to work out of the box, but apparently that's not how it works. And I'm also going to be covering the general additional variables that you get. I have the documentation up right here, and we're going to go through it. So let's start with the WooCommerce SEO settings. You're able to set schema and open graph markup here that is associated with the brand, manufacturer, and color of the product. The data is pulled in from a variety of sources that you can choose from, primarily different tags, the product category, the product tags. This is the one that's really going to matter. A product shipping class, product color, and product size of product ounces, the last three of which are all attributes. Attributes, as we covered in the WooCommerce variable product video, which I'll put up in the eye, are means of segmenting different variations of a single product. So for instance, if you sell a cup and you have it in 3 different sizes, you would set up an attribute like I did for the product size in ounces. And I made that specifically for a terrible cup that should never be sold or purchased. But you can set the schema markup here as needed. You technically don't need to do this at all. I do recommend, if you can, setting up the data for your products, at least the manufacturer and the brand. If you sell products that are not just your own, maybe you have third-party vendors on your website, I highly recommend that you set that up. And you do have attributes for them that you should definitely add. The primary reason I recommend adding them is it can help in Google search, but it also helps Google show how products are related. So if a product has a similar name to another product and they're from 2 separate companies, but somebody searches for the company name followed by the product, this could help your listing rank better. It also helps Google understand who the product was made by and what the brand is of the product, even if you're not necessarily communicating that directly to your site visitors. The color one is just, it's kind of silly in my opinion, but it's an option. For the sake of it, because I also do not care, I'm just going to set it to product categories just to show you what happens. So if I reload this page right here, we can see that I have markup right here. First of all, the retailer item ID, the condition, and the open graph availability. This data is used for rich pins, but if we select the brand and the manufacturer, we should see additional markup added. We should see it's right here. As you can see, the brand was added, and if you search for manufacturer, the data was indeed output. As you can see right here, the Yoast SEO graph data was added in the footer. I'm not quite sure why it adds that data in the footer, but we'll let it be. There's probably some weird reason Yoast has it that way, but we will let that stay. The final option you have in the direct plugin settings is to move the WooCommerce meta box up above the Yoast SEO meta box. It's just a quick setting. It doesn't really do all that much. In my opinion, leave it at the default to have it checked, just so that way you can easily edit your WooCommerce meta box, and then you do your SEO last when you're adding products. Now, the really important thing that is not listed on the sales page is the inclusion of additional variables. If you're using the WooCommerce SEO plugin, you do gain access to additional variables for setting up your search appearance. If you're a site that has thousands of products and you never bothered to write descriptions for each of them individually, don't you worry. You have a whole host of different variables that you can now work with. I'm going to note, I could not get these to appear when I was just manually typing in the number sign and WC. I had to type out the exact variable, and it's not available in the insert snippet variable function either. That should honestly be fixed. If I'm paying for a premium add-on from Yoast, I expect that functionality to be obvious, especially if you're editing the products. That is something they should resolve. The WooCommerce short description markup, what this does is it basically takes the excerpt of the WooCommerce short description meta box, and it will use that to generate your meta description from. This is useful because typically the short description box is where people give a brief overview of what the product is, and it's quickly accessible to the user. This is typically the sales punch that you're trying to convert your users on, and this is useful to have. I honestly wish this was baked into Yoast SEO out of the box. Otherwise, it will generate it from the main description box, which is just the primary content box that you see up here. This typically has more information that you're trying to add for contextual value, mostly for SEO. The short description box, though, I think works better in most situations for your SEO, at least for your meta description. You can also get the WC SKU. SKUs, I don't honestly see where you would use this, in all honesty. Yeah, it's a feature though. What you can do also is if you have the WooCommerce brands plugin, as it mentions, you can declare basically a list of brands. This also kind of loops back and integrates with that original settings menu where you could set who the branding was for the meta markup. Or the perfect WooCommerce brands plugin, which is another alternative. It's free. I'll make videos on them later down the line, but I don't really see where you'd use this. Maybe if you wanted in the title, if you're trying to craft a title where you focused on the brand and then the title of the product, that could be useful. But really, I wouldn't worry too much about it. And the final thing is the price. I wouldn't add the price, really, ever. Because the places that you're going to add the price in would typically be really the meta description, but with proper schema markup, assuming you didn't turn it off for some weird reason, you're already going to get that data to appear in search, and that's where most of the users are going to care about the price immediately. Outside of that, you really just get some back end stuff. So you do get the rich pins, which they do mention. They did not really mention though how you get approved for that. And I had to Google this, and I had to check the documentation in Pinterest. And you actually have to go to the rich pins validator tool, and you have to choose the page. You have to give a URL, and once it validates it and it checks that there's no problems, your domain will now have access to rich pins. I don't understand what kind of convoluted system that was on Pinterest parts. That's just a really, really weird setting. If you're using this plugin and you never validated, you do not have access to rich pins, at least according to their documentation. So make sure you run it through this validator. I'll include it in the link in the description just so that way you can easily find it, because you're certainly going to want to test this. But what's great is once you're approved and it's showing, I've been approved for a little while now, and I keep refreshing these random products that I added, but I'm not getting any sort of rich pinned data. But basically, as it mentions in the image, it will list the product price. It'll mention whether it's in stock or out of stock, and it gives a really clear and visible link to make users want to click on your product. It also makes sure that the product data is listed, which is the name of the product. That way users who were on Pinterest can convert easier into potential customers. This is quite a valuable tool. I don't know if that alone would make me buy this plugin, because Pinterest, while it's great, I don't honestly know how many businesses are using Pinterest as their primary means of sales generation. But if you have a large enough Pinterest following, this can be quite valuable to you. Outside of that, we've covered our variables and the rich pins. Everything else lies within the editing screen of the WooCommerce products. Everything else is kind of back end. It sets some items like variable URLs and whatnot to no index. It does cleanup work. It's just it's mostly a behind the scenes type plugin, which is just no fun for the consumer. But you do get access to product identifiers. Product identifiers are useful if you're trying to clear out warnings in Search Console. And I don't know what all these numbers means, but you can click over here and it's a 18 to 13 digit number that's assigned to the product to help identify it. And there is just a ton of different product identifier numbers, probably for different regions in the world. And you can go ahead and fill out the ones that apply to your specific product. This can be useful because there is a Search Console validation warning, at least for, I think it's GTIN 8 and ISBN. They do appear in Search Console as a warning if they're not present as a recommendation for you to add. Really, all that Search Console wants is for you to add some sort of number identifier that's related to the product. That way it can associate it with the proper identification. Realistically, though, it's not going to impact your search if you don't have it. Honestly, I don't see most sites actually include this data anywhere. So most sites, including yours, are probably a good enough company for this to not really matter. Outside of that, that's pretty much all you really get. The variables were cool, and we can see it right here that the variable is pulling from the short description. And if you type stuff randomly like this, and you update your post, and there you go. It updates it from the short description. The plugin has no technical fault with it. I just don't understand if it's honestly worth it to the average store. Unless you're a store that has a lot of different products and you're kind of like a marketplace type store where you have a wide array of customers and you're selling a lot of products from different brands, that's really the only time I see this being of value to you. The alternative is you really just want access to rich pins. Rich pins can be quite useful if your business does get a lot of sales on Pinterest. That being said, I don't think I've worked with a business anytime soon that I can at least remember that has relied on Pinterest as a primary means of sales generation. So the plugin works. It adds value. It does a lot of behind the scenes cleanup. But what I'm struggling with in recommending it to you is I don't think that it commands enough immediate value to justify its cost. And that's honestly the major crux. The Yoast SEO out of the box is what most of you would probably be fine with using. You don't really need Yoast SEO, WooCommerce SEO, unless you have a substantial number of products. If you're somebody, though, and you want to have the latest and greatest of everything, and you want to get the access to rich pins, which can be a valuable experience for $60, then go ahead and give it a shot. If it turns out it doesn't work for you, don't renew. But if it came down to whether you were getting Yoast SEO Premium or you were getting Yoast SEO WooCommerce SEO, personally, I would probably just go with Yoast SEO Premium. It's a great plugin. The functionality it adds is awesome. It does a lot of behind the scenes work, but it fails in the value category, which is disappointing for a lot of reasons. Yoast SEO is pretty expensive out compared to its immediate competition, but this plugin doesn't really add a lot of value to you as a user. I hope to see that they add something new in the future to help justify its immediate cost, but I would say unless you really need those rich pins, I would just skip it. If you do have a question about the plugin or its functionality, you can ask in the comments below and I'll try to help you out. If you already purchased it, let me know your thoughts and how you've been using it. But more or less, I'm just not that big of a fan. Otherwise, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.